this week.
Justice and Diversity League celebrates Women's History Month.
Our reporters recap state basketball.
And the basketball team reflects on its historic season, all here on the MWHS Wildcat News. Good morning, Wildcats. I'm Edison Geiler.
And I'm Jenna Reynolds. The wall outside the library once again has decorations, a telltale sign of Justice and Diversity League putting together another mural. This time, the club is celebrating Women's History Month by educating students about the accomplishments of women throughout history. And here with more is Annabelle Harshberger and Caden Roth.
The month of March is used to celebrate, honor, and recognize women. Women's History Week was first recognized in 1980 by President Jimmy Carter after a number of women's groups and historians petitioned for national recognition. The month is now used to amplify the voices of women across the country.
The history of any marginalized community, any community that's been devalued in the past, is important to hear from. And I think a lot of, history books, the primary sources that they use sometimes are kind of telling a story about a group from somebody else's perspective. And so part of Women's History Month to me is the process of listening to women's voices, letting them tell their own stories.
The month is now dedicated to acknowledging the impact and contributions women have made throughout our history. The wall in front of the library is decorated with posters featuring prominent women in history and was set up by Justice and Diversity League. The month of celebration helps to educate and emphasize the voices of women in our community.
So as a student, I feel like I gain more knowledge about how other women are impacted and how their experiences have changed over time and how I can learn from them and how other women around me can learn from them. I understand more about how to beat these social norms and how to educate other people.
The mural in front of the library highlights women who played crucial roles in the different time periods throughout American history. One very influential woman is Harriet Tubman, an American abolitionist who was born into slavery but escaped. She then led hundreds of slaves into freedom and the Underground Railroad. Ruth Bader Ginsburg was an American Supreme Court justice who served from 1993 until she passed in 2020. Ginsburg was the second female justice and was famous for fighting for women's reproductive rights.
I think it's important to listen to women during this month, let them share their stories, and validate them, especially if that's not happening all the time, and it's a perfect month to continue doing that and raise awareness.
As we continue to learn about the impact women have in our society, it's important to remember the struggles and oppression women have faced in the past and today. Make sure to check out the posters around school. This has been Caden Roth and Annabelle Harshberger reporting for the MWHS Wildcat News.
Though not in March, the senior formal banquet is coming up. On April 24th, seniors will come to Wildcat 1 to watch a senior photo video, eat food, and watch live performances by students.
And it is a while away, but the dress code right now is semi-formal to formal, so you can start planning outfits to wear that will fit those criteria.
And kicking off sports this week, bright pink, yellow, and green neon clothing loudly glowed in Pinnacle Bank Arena as one of the largest student sections in the state cheered on the basketball team. As you know by now, the Wildcats took on the Millard North Mustangs in the state semifinal round, but here to provide more details and player reactions are Evan Vaslow and John Willis.
It had been 5 years since the varsity boys basketball team made state. That was until a huge upset by the Wildcats over Westside in the Class A7 district finals. Millard West then earned their spot to compete against 7 other schools at Pinnacle Bank Arena in Lincoln with a chance to win the state championship.
We try to tell them it's a game just like every other game. We prepare the same, but you can't really prepare for it if you haven't been there because of the crowd, the shooting. You can't simulate it shooting because it's such a big arena.
Millard West would first face off against Lincoln Pius X. The first half of this March 9th matchup at Pinnacle Bank Arena was very defensive with both offenses struggling from the field. Millard West was able to go on a bit of a run to end the first half behind some big shots from senior Ryan Larson and held a 22-15 lead. The second half of the game was more competitive, full of high-energy plays. The Wildcats had a 6-point advantage with just about 2 minutes left of the game, but due to some missed free throws from senior James Conway and junior Chase Holtman, Pius was able to stay in it. The Thunderbolts then charged down the court, and Sam Hoiberg made a wide-open three to tie the game at 45 with only 3.8 seconds left. With just over 3 seconds left in the game, Conway heaved a half-court pass to Meyersick, who turned around, tripped, but threw up a shot, and it went off the glass as time expired. Millard West rushed the court, and the student section went nuts, as Meyersick had sent the Wildcats to the semifinals for the first time in 21 years.
I hadn't had the best. I was missing layups all night, and I made the one that counted. Yeah, well, I was like, I lost my balance once I'd shot it, and I looked back up and saw it go through the net and heard everybody scream.
With the win, the Wildcats then moved on to play the number 1 ranked Millard North Mustangs. They were confident that if they slowed the pace down and played their kind of game, then they could compete with these guys. The Wildcats started out the first quarter hot, going toe-to-toe with Millard North. Meyersick made some big energy shots in the paint to help West have it tied 12-12 after 1. Senior St. Thomas erupted in the second quarter, though, sinking 3 threes in the period to help the Mustangs outscore the Wildcats by 8, giving them a 31-23 halftime lead. Millard North committed turnovers early in the third quarter, which resulted in Millard West being able to close the gap behind some tough paint shots. Millard West actually led 37-36 with 3:08 left in the quarter, but Thomas and the Mustangs erupted with an 11-0 run. Thomas scored 9 of those points for Millard North, putting them up by 10 after the third. The big story of the fourth was free throw shooting. The Mustangs went 14 for 16 from the charity stripe in the final period, helping them close the game out. Millard West was able to keep it close behind some threes from Larson, but it wasn't enough, and Millard North held on to win 69-62.
It feels great knowing that we were there because they ended up winning the championship, which could have been that. It just means that we could have been there too.
Millard West finished the year with a total record of 18-7. The entire starting 5 for the Wildcats were seniors this year, which means this team will look a lot different when they take the floor next season. For the MWHS Wildcat News, this has been Evan Vaslow and John Willis.
The loss marked a disappointing end to a memorable season. For the first time in 21 years, the Wildcats won a game in the state tournament and managed to keep the game close against the eventual champions. Though the conclusion still stings, the team was able to reflect with Tenley Wright and Miguel Paredes Reyes on this historic year.
After a loss to Millard North in the state semifinals, Millard West's boys basketball season came to an end. The Wildcats finished the regular season with a record of 16-6, placing 4th in most postseason rankings.
It was a really fun season. Different with all of the COVID regulations, but our guys were great all year, wore their masks in practice even though they didn't have to according to the state, and it was just our seniors had great leadership. We had great practices all year and it paid off at the end.
The Wildcats got a solid start to their season with 3 wins before dropping their 4th game to top 10 opponent Creighton Prep, who narrowly escaped the Cats, winning 42-40. The team would go 4-2 in their next 6 games, including a big win against Q Street rival Millard South and losses to Omaha North and nationally ranked Bellevue West. The Wildcats won their next 5 games, picking up their longest win streak of the season and improving their record to 12-3. They dropped 2 of their next 3 games to Westside and Millard North, collected 2 more wins, and would finish out the regular season by losing it to a top-ranked Iowa school, Abraham Lincoln High.
I had high hopes going into the season. I know we had some talented players, but and the goal was to make it to state and to win some games, and we succeeded that. So I'm pretty happy with the season. The only thing I could have asked for was to win it all, but there's some talented teams, so I think we did the best we could and ended up successful.
The Wildcats then took on the district tournament in games against Omaha North and Westside, opponents they'd previously lost to. After defeating the Vikings 52-34, the only team in the way of their state tournament hopes was Omaha Westside. The game was a nail-biter, but after a missed 3-pointer by Payson Gillespie, the Wildcats won the district championship 55-54.
Beating Westside without Evan was a pretty big deal. They played for each other. They weren't just playing basketball. They really, truly played for each other.
This year, the team's starting lineup consisted of purely seniors, with supporting cast Chase Holtman and Trace Thaden helping out.
My mindset this year was to help out the seniors as much as I could because we had 9 of them. 5 seniors that started, and just to help them out as much as I could was fun.
The effort the team put in this season hasn't gone unnoticed, as the support from Millard West students and staff created a team chemistry like no other.
I think the biggest part is how close of friends they were. They came to practice together, they left together, they had fun while working hard together, and then especially seeing the student section in the semifinals. When we came out, there had to be 600 students there 20 minutes before the game, so that was a lot of fun.
This has been Miguel Paredes Reyes and Tenley Wright with the MWHS Wildcat News.
Are you still craving sports after the conclusion of basketball? Well, never fear, because spring sports are here. Both the soccer and baseball teams are starting up their season this week. If you need your fix of Millard West sports, be sure to check out our Strive channel at this link. You can find great live streams and schedules, all headed by our executive producer, John Willis.
And maybe some of you want to become lost in the memories of winter sports earlier in the year. We might have a solution for that too. Coming out next week is the third edition of the Catalyst newspaper for this year's cycle. In addition to extensive sports coverage, its theme will be then and now, looking back on the trends of early 2000s and comparing them to 2021. You won't want to miss it.
And before we go, we have a quick PSA about double masking by Evan Vaslow and Joseph Ebmeyer. Check it out.
With the recent discoveries of new strains of SARS-CoV-2, Dr. Anthony Fauci and the CDC are recommending that people wear 2 masks. Implementing 2 masks makes them fit closer, and the closer fitting your mask is, the fewer gaps there are through which droplets can enter. Some people might be concerned that wearing 2 masks will make breathing even harder, but several studies have shown that mask wearing doesn't impede oxygen consumption. Wearing 2 masks might be uncomfortable at first, but it is completely safe, and being a little bit uncomfortable is a lot better than getting or spreading COVID-19.
That's all for this week.
Make sure to follow us on our social media, check out more stories on our online website, and as always, be sure to watch our previous broadcasts. For the MWHS Wildcat News, this has been Jenna Reynolds
and Edison Geiler. We'll see you next week.